What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, it's the Game Week 9 preview, so I'm going to go through a bit of information from midweek, so Champions League stuff and the impact that has from an FPL point of view. Then I'm going to talk about captaincy, which feels pointless at the moment, and then I'm going to answer some of your questions as well. So let's get into it. I just want to start with some really quick information from Chelsea's press conference ahead of their Champions League game midweek, because it might have a small impact on your FPL team. Obviously, we'll literally see the game tonight to see who's involved, the minutes and stuff like that. We'll also hear from Maresca again on Friday. But on Enzo Fernandez, he did take part in the session yesterday, so that would have been on Monday, I believe. He said, we have one more session and we will see what we do tomorrow. It's not something to be worried about, but we have to protect Enzo. So it does sound like he could be involved in their Champions League game, potentially off the bench rather than a start. But if you've got him, it looks pretty good, I think, that he's going to be involved this weekend. You don't have to make any decisions right now, but if you are wondering about it, he may well start against Sunderland at home, potentially even someone to look to buy this week. Because Chelsea's fixtures are still pretty good, even though the Nottingham Forest away game is now gone. Sunderland at home, Spurs away, Wolves at home, Burnley away. Then Arsenal at home in 13 is not great, although potentially free hit 13 is an option, which I might speak about in tomorrow's team selection video, and then Leeds away in 14. So if he gets minutes off the bench, and then Maresca is positive about him on Friday, definitely someone to consider. So don't write him off from your options. He also said Delap is very close to returning, and the hope is in the next few days he will take part in the sessions also. I would say with Delap, all he's really going to impact is GYÖ. I think once Delap is back fit and available, he'll just play 9, João Pedro will play 10, and Enzo will drop a bit deeper alongside Caicedo, and GYÖ just basically won't play. And that will be the setup until Palmer is back. Now, obviously, if Delap's only just back from injury, he's not going to go in and play 90 minutes every single game. So GYÖ might get some minutes, but longer term, it's not going to happen that often, in my opinion. And I don't think Enzo moving back alongside Caicedo instead of playing number 10 is also a major issue either. Because ultimately, Caicedo will do a lot of the defensive work and Enzo will still get forward. So ideally, you want Palmer out as an Enzo owner for penalties and for him to play number 10. But even if Delap comes back, Enzo's still going to be a good pick. So watch out for his minutes in the Champions League. If he comes off the bench and gets some, and then looks set to play Game Week 9, and you need a midfield upgrade, definitely someone to consider. So let's talk about Arsenal's Champions League game from last night and whether there's anything relevant to FPL. So the back four was pretty much what we've come to expect apart from one change. So it was Timber, Saliba, Gabriel, and then Lewis Skelly at left back instead of Calafiori. I think that's the second time that Calafiori's been rested in the Champions League, and I believe Timber has already been rested in that competition as well. That spells good things for their minutes in the Premier League. It does look like most of those players in that back four are going to get a rest in the Champions League or Carabao Cup rather than in the Premier League. So Timber and Calafiori, which I think most people know already, are definitely good alternatives to Gabriel, or you could have two of them, two of those three, because they're going to get a lot of minutes in the Premier League. The way the Champions League is set up, there's not that much jeopardy for a team like Arsenal. Obviously, they want to finish in the top 8, so they avoid the playoff games. But all they've got to do to have a chance of moving forward to the knockouts is to finish in the top 24, which they absolutely will do. So it's not really a problem to rest one or two players. So Timber, Saliba, Gabriel, and Calafiori, we're going to see that a lot in the Premier League. Now, I'm not going to sit here and guarantee you those four players will play each of the next 6 to 8 game weeks, but they're going to get close to it. Minimum of probably 7, I would say. I think the game week you've got to be a little bit worried about is probably game week 14. Because 13 is weekend, 14 is midweek, and then 15 is weekend again. So it's a shorter turnaround. And the midweek game is Brentford at home. So of the 3 fixtures Arsenal have, game weeks 13 to 15, the easiest one is game week 14. And that's the midweek fixture. So could we see Lewis Skelly come in for Calafiori or Ben White come in for Timber? Possibly. Could it happen before? Of course. But I just think the better Arsenal do in the Champions League, the more rotation they can afford to have in that competition and still do fine. Like, they're one of the better teams in that competition anyway. So 1 or 2 changes is not going to massively affect them. So basically what I'm saying is Gabriel is still great. If you want to buy Calafiori or Timber, they're also really good picks. Saliba's also fine, by the way. He will play most games too. He's just not that exciting from an attacking point of view, and he's more expensive than the likes of Calafiori as well. Eze started... Oh, by the way, Gabriel came off around the 70th minute. The commentator did mention that before he got subbed, he was stretching his thigh. And I saw a journalist mention the same thing about 5 or 10 minutes before. So maybe he was struggling with something very minor, but he didn't look particularly concerned when he came off. Nothing was mentioned about it after the game. I think they were just taking him off as a precaution. They've got Mosquera now. They don't need to risk Gabriel or Saliba. So I would fully expect him to start in game week 9. And by the way, he got another assist last night for a GYÖKERES goal. So assist last night, he got an assist at the weekend. He's got another goal recently. The guy's just a joke. That's why he's my favourite Arsenal defender. He's such a threat from set pieces. Eze started again, as we would expect. He came off around the 70th minute. If you've got him, I wouldn't panic. I would just hold on to him. But I don't think I would buy him right now. Because even without Odegaard, he's getting subbed early in some games. And obviously when Odegaard is back, which is probably going to be after the international break, then Eze becomes a little bit of a problem for starts as well. So I just personally would not go there. I think there's 3 better Arsenal players you can go. And you're probably going to want them for the long term anyway. Saka played the full game, which you could look at it and say I'd rather he got a bit of a rest in this match, so he's fully ready for game week 9. But he's going to start game week 9. And if anything, it proves that his fitness is looking pretty good right now. He didn't get any attack and returns. I think that's now 3 games in a row where outside of a penalty, he's not had anything. But obviously in FPL, he's done fine, right? Penalty in game week 7. In game week 8, he got 12 DEFCONs. So he got the DEFCON points plus bonus. So he's done fine, and he'll still be a good pick moving forward. GYÖKERES finally scored again. In fact, he got 2 goals. The first one was quite funny, the way it happened. But look, he scored. That's all he's going to care about. And the second one was off a set piece where Gabriel got the assist. That's obviously going to help his confidence because Arteta's been saying he's been playing well. Now it's time for kind of the goals, and that's happened. So hopefully he takes that through to the Premier League. I have had some questions already. I was thinking about doing GYÖKERES to Saka. Should I still make that move? Ultimately, I think the same as I did before this match, before GYÖKERES scored twice. I think Saka is the better pick. If I was wildcarding this week, I would have Saka instead of GYÖKERES. If I was free hitting in game week 10 and Haaland picked up an injury and I wanted to captain someone from Arsenal against Burnley away, I'd prefer to captain Saka than GYÖKERES. So that tells me that I think Saka is the better pick, but it is not a move you need to force. I don't think GYÖKERES is this massive problem. And someone made a comment on the video yesterday to say that I always say that, right? I always say I probably wouldn't buy, but I probably wouldn't sell. You can keep hold of them. But honestly, that is the reality for most players in your team. Most of them are not massive problems. Unless they're not starting or they're injured or they're suspended, they're probably okay to hold on to until you can get the free transfers to deal with it. So if you're thinking about doing GYÖKERES to Saka for a hit, I just wouldn't bother. You know, I've had the question about whether to swap them a lot over the last couple of weeks, and I always kind of hesitate because I think it's an okay move, but nothing more than that. Like, if you were thinking about doing GYÖKERES and Fernandes to Saka and Mateta, there's no way I would do that this week because GYÖKERES and Fernandes have better fixtures than Mateta and Saka. Game week 10, maybe you do it, right? But until you've got spare transfers and nothing else to deal with, I don't think you need to force that move. GYÖKERES is not a terrible pick. Just because you wouldn't wildcard someone in or buy someone, it doesn't mean that they're in your team and they're a huge problem. Like if I had to play him against Palace at home, Burnley away, Sunderland away, that's fine. Until Havertz is back. I think Havertz is the big competition. The one thing we know with GYÖKERES now is minutes are great. No one else is really playing that number 9 spot regularly. He played 80 minutes again last night. He keeps playing 90 in the league. Until Havertz is back, his minutes are great. He's playing number 9 for probably the best team in the league right now. He's not a massive problem. And you don't need to force out the sale. And if you're not sure about doing it this week, delay the decision until game week 10. If you get to game week 10, you've got to keep him for Burnley. That's also fine. But I stand by what I said. Saka is the better pick. I just don't think there's a huge gap between the two. Is basically it, which is why I don't think you need to force the move, and I definitely would not do it for a -4. So for Newcastle, the back four last night in their Champions League game was Trippier, Chow, Botman and Dan Burn. So at the moment, Cher is not getting many minutes. If you want a Newcastle defender, I would still go for Burn, because I think long-term, his minutes are the most secure, but I wouldn't be actively looking to buy a Newcastle defender right now. 3 of the next 5 are away, West Ham, Brentford and Everton, and none of them individually are terrible fixtures. I'm sure Dan Burn owners are probably going to play him in most of those games, but it's also not a fixture I would actively look to target. And in game week 12, it's City at home as well. So if I was on Wildcard, I might consider it because you could play them against Fulham at home. There are a few fixtures after that they're okay. And then you've got Burnley at home in 15, Sunderland away at 16. So as a long-term option, I would consider them on Wildcard. But if you're not desperate for a new defender, I don't think Newcastle defence is essential or anything like that right now. The front three was Murphy, Voltemada, Gordon. The only two that really matter from an FPL point of view are Voltemada and Gordon. Voltemada's minutes are just great right now until Visser is back, which could be in the next couple of weeks. He's a good pick if you want to go for him. Anthony Gordon did get a goal and an assist last night and played about 85 minutes. So he is capable of playing more than 70, even though we've not seen him that in the league in the last 3 games. In fact, his minutes in the Champions League have been extremely good. So I stick by what I said yesterday. If you've got Gordon, the returns will come. The next 3 fixtures are good. There is no need to rush him out. Fulham at home, West Ham away, Brentford away. Will it be annoying if he plays less than 70 minutes in each of those games? Yes. But there is a chance he plays more. And Eddie Howe even made a comment after the game about how their players like Gordon are doing it in the Champions League but not getting goals and assists in the Premier League, and hopefully that will come, etc. And he's on penalties as well. So I wouldn't sell him. I probably wouldn't buy him, but just to say that again. Yeah, I think there's probably cheaper players you could go for, like Sarr from next week, Enzo if he's fit, etc. If I've already got him in my team, I wouldn't be actively looking to sell. I don't see him as a problem at all. He always starts. He's on penalties. The next 3 fixtures are good, and the minutes are only going to go one way, in my opinion. They're not going to get worse. I don't see him getting benched anytime soon. I don't see him getting subbed off before the 60th minute. I think they can only improve. So I think if you've got Gordon, you hold. Let's talk about captaincy for game week 9. And did you know, once upon a time, I used to do a separate captaincy video on this channel. So a whole video dedicated to captaincy. And I believe it was either Haaland or Salah that stopped me doing that, because one of them was just the go-to captain every single week, and it was pointless making a whole separate video about it. I'm almost starting to think it's pointless even having this section in this video every week, because it's basically just Haaland again. He's away from home, of course. It's Aston Villa, they're not pushovers. They've only conceded 8 goals so far this season, but it's also Erling Haaland. He scored again last night in the Champions League. If Man City's, like when I tweeted about Man City's goal at the weekend, I didn't even name Haaland. I just said, you know who it is. That's where we're at with them right now. They will score against Villa, I'm pretty sure about that. If they do that, it's probably going to be Haaland. It's just so difficult to go against him. I can't even really make a great case for Salah or Saka. The case for Salah right now is, we know what he's capable of, even though we haven't really seen it that much this season. And the fixture is better, Brentford away, and he's a big differential. That is the case. I cannot sit here and tell you that I believe Salah is a better captain than Haaland this week, because I don't right now. So if you want to go for differential reasons, and the fact that it does seem likely that at some point Salah will improve, that's a reason to captain him, I guess. But if you're asking me who I think is the best option on paper right now, I mean, it's Haaland. And you don't really need me to sit here and tell you that. If you want to go for a different alternative, you got Saka against Crystal Palace at home. And look, Arsenal are the best team in the league right now. They are strong at home. As good as Palace are, they'll find it difficult against Arsenal. But is the fact that Saka's playing at home enough to not go Haaland? Not really. Not really. I mean, Saka's underlying numbers are very skewed towards being creative. His open play goal threat so far this season, 0.08 expected goals per 90. That's really terrible. Now, those numbers would improve. Saka is a better player than that. But you look at the gulf between the two goal threat of Haaland and Saka. Saka 0.08, Haaland 1.14. And they're both on penalties. Even though Haaland hasn't had a great record recently, I don't think. But either way, he's on penalties. He'll probably score. So, it's Haaland. Let me know. Should I take this section out of the videos until further notice? So let's get into some of your questions. And this one I kind of covered earlier. But basically, would you take a -4 to swap Arsenal players around? Put simply, no. Unless you've bought a player that's not guaranteed to start, like a Ben White or a Lewis Skelly, Martinelli, someone like that, I would not take a -4. In most cases, I'm not even sure I would swap them for free, because I don't believe that most people watching this video have got such a good squad. They've got the luxury of moving a good player to another good player. There's usually bigger issues to deal with. And that's the thing with Arsenal, right? If you've got Raya, Timber, Saliba, Gabriel, Calafiori, Declan Rice, Eze, Saka, Gyökeres, that's 9 players I've just mentioned who are all good FPL picks. So if you sell them, you're selling a really good player to another really good player. There is probably a better transfer you can make instead. Now, not to go over it all again, but the Gyökeres to Saka swap, I've said if you've got the transfers to do it and there's nothing else wrong with your squad, then go ahead and do it. But if you've got other problems to deal with, keeping Gyökeres is fine. If you've got other problems to deal with, keeping Eze is fine. Right? I've got my preference on who the best 3 Arsenal are right now. If I was wildcarding, I would probably go Saka, Timber, Gabriel. But if you've got Raya and Gabriel, that's fine. If you've got Calafiori and Saliba, that's fine. They're all good picks. The fixtures are good coming up. There's definitely no need to take a -4. I think that's crazy. I'm sure, because this always happens every time I say this, I'm sure there is someone out there where it does make sense to take a -4 for your specific scenario with your squad. But I bet in 99.99999% of cases, it doesn't. So I would not take a -4. And for most of you, I probably wouldn't use free transfers unless you got the luxury. And there's a lot of people right now, I know because of the questions I get, that are sat there with 4 or 5 transfers. So using a couple of them to move Gyökeres to Saka is fine. I've got 2, and it does not make sense for my team to make that move this week. So I'm simply just not going to do it. I'll wait till game week 10, and even then I might keep Gyökeres. So is there any obvious advantage to wildcard in game week 13 rather than just using it in game weeks 9 or 10? Now, cliche alert, this is going to depend on your team. And I know everyone finds it super funny when content creators say that, but it's a fact, right? If your team looks great right now, you obviously don't need a wildcard. You can just wait until later on. There are some fixture swings which I'll talk about in a minute. But if you're looking at your team and there's a few problems in there, you're thinking about taking a hit, and a wildcard could just solve it all, then great. Like, one of the teams that are going to have a bit of a fixture swing later on is Newcastle. But as I've already mentioned, if I was wildcarding this week, I might include a Newcastle defender. I might include one of their attackers because they've got okay fixtures now. And then long term, you've got them ready for the really good fixtures later on. So it's not a problem to wildcard now. I've seen a lot of people considering 9 or 10. If your team needs it, it needs it. Like next week, you can get your triple Arsenal, whichever best 3 players you think they are, triple Palace, etc. That's already 6 of your 15 sorted. And then you can just fill in the rest of the blank. So if your team needs it, go now. It's not a massive advantage to wait in later on. The big reason people want to do it in 12 or 13 is because of the fixture swings. So in game week 13 specifically, Arsenal play Chelsea, which is not a great fixture. So you can offload some of those players and then also look to bring in Liverpool, Man City and Newcastle players who have got good fixtures after that point. Now, with Arsenal in particular, game week 13 is not a huge problem because you're going to want them later on. Because it's Brentford at home in 14, Villa away, Wolves at home, Everton away, Brighton at home, Villa at home. You know, if you're on triple Arsenal now, you're not going to sell them for Chelsea away. You're going to keep them because they're really good afterwards. So Arsenal are not a big part of the equation, but Chelsea are. Because Chelsea have got really nice fixtures now till game week 12, but then they get a bit tougher. Arsenal at home in 13. Leeds away is okay in 14, but then it's Bournemouth away. Everton at home is okay, but then it's Newcastle away. Then you've got Villa, Bournemouth, Man City away. So the fixtures are not terrible, but I think if you were wildcarding in game week 13, you'd probably go with 0 Chelsea players, probably. So you can come off Chelsea and then you can go to Liverpool, which I know right now doesn't look great, but they have got really good fixtures. Forest at home in 12, West Ham away, Sunderland at home, Leeds away, Brighton at home, Spurs away, Wolves at home, Leeds at home. The fixture run is incredible. So even if you don't go Salah, like Van Dijk, Gakpo, maybe Isak's an option. Obviously, with African Cup of Nations, that will add another player into the mix as well, whoever goes and plays right wing. And then Man City. Now, it might be that we get to game week 13 and we're not confident in any player's minutes apart from Haaland. But if there's some injuries, and you know that Vardyol's nailed, or Foden's nailed, or Reinders is nailed, or Marmoush is nailed, whatever it might be, well, in game week 13, you've got Leeds at home, Fulham away, Sunderland at home, Palace away, West Ham at home, Forest away, Sunderland away. It's a really nice fixture run. And if you knew 3 players from Man City were nailed for those games, which I appreciate is not likely, but if they were, you would triple up for that run. So all of a sudden, you can drop your Chelsea and you can get your Man City, Liverpool, Newcastle and Arsenal players in. And if your team looks fine now, it's perfectly okay to wait until later on. But if your team looks bad now, just get them in now. Because having Haaland is one of those players that you'll want later on. Triple Arsenal is still good now and it will still be good later. It's not a... In terms of whether it's an advantage, like it really just does depend on how your team looks right now. I can't keep saying it. Take Newcastle, right? Just really quickly while I finish this little section off. You know, I've said already that I wouldn't be necessarily actively looking to buy their players right now, but they're also okay. So yes, they've got a bit of a fixture swing from game week 15. Burnley at home, Sunderland away. Then it's Chelsea at home, Man United away, not quite so good. But then it's Burnley, Palace, Leeds, Wolves, Villa. So their fixture run from 15 to 23 is really nice. But if you had to wildcard now and pick up 1 or 2, ready for that run later on, the fixtures are still okay right now. So does your team need a wildcard? If yes, wildcard now or 10. If not, wait until 12, 13. Like that's all there is to it, basically. Hopefully that made sense while I was rambling. So are Liverpool players suddenly a write-off for the moment, or should we still plan to bring them in game week 12? The way that I'm viewing this is basically to try and remain open-minded. Because right now it feels easy to just say I don't want any Liverpool players outside of maybe Gakpo I'll come on to in a minute. But honestly, if any team had that fixture on game week 12 onwards, of Forest at home, West Ham away, Sunderland at home, Leeds away, Brighton at home, we'd be looking at that team trying to see if they had any FPL picks. And with Liverpool, you've got what will probably be by the end of the season, one of the best teams in the league. So the idea of writing them off when they got that fixture run seems kind of crazy. And by the way, after that Brighton game, the fixtures continue. Spurs away in 17. Okay, it's not amazing, but it's not terrible. Then Wolves at home, Leeds at home. So between game weeks 12 and 19, they've got all of Forest, Sunderland, Wolves and Leeds at home. And 2 of the away games are Leeds again and then West Ham. Like, that's an incredible fixture run. If Man United had that fixture run, even people that hate Bruno Fernandes would think about buying him. I've got Bruno, obviously. I'd be thinking about, do I go and get De Ligt? Do I go and get Mbeumo as well? That's how good that fixture run is. So the idea that we should just completely ignore Liverpool players seems kind of crazy. That being said, I don't know if I would... Like, if there's a move I really want to do now that's potentially going to block me later on from a Liverpool move because I've used up a transfer or whatever, I don't think I would delay that move necessarily. If you can, leave your options open. But if there's something you need to do right now which might stop you getting a Liverpool player in 12, I think I would just make the move now. Because the problem is, as good as the fixture run is, like, which players do you bring in? Okay, so I've got Van Dijk, and honestly, I think he's the only defender to consider, but he costs 6 million. So how many people are going to have that much to spend on a defender? Konate's 5.4. For 0.6 million less, I don't think he offers enough to warrant going for. Like, he will pick up the odd defensive contribution points, but his goal threat's not as good as Van Dijk. So Van Dijk, to me, is the only defender. GYÖKERES keeps playing, but he's not been that attacking. Surely Robertson's going to play at some point. Maybe he won't, I don't know. And obviously, Frimpong and Bradley, they're not guaranteed minutes. So Van Dijk's the only defender. Then you move on to the midfielders. Salah, for me, is still the best option. When I spoke about this on Twitter last night, everyone just kept saying, why are you worried about Salah? Just get Gakpo. That's fine. He looked really good against Man United. He's played 690 minutes out of the first 8 games. But would people still be saying that if we were discussing this after he got benched against Palace? Probably not. I think from everything we've seen, Salah's minutes are still better than Gakpo. He's still on penalties. For me, he's still the main man. But he costs 14.4 million. Most people don't want to sell Haaland. So how would you get Salah in? It's really difficult. So maybe you free hit in 12 or 14. The problem with that is, if your team looks good in 12, it also looks good in 14. You probably don't need a free hit, which I'll talk about tomorrow. So Gakpo's potentially an option at 7.5. They're the only 2 midfielders. Like Szoboszlai at 6.5, that just doesn't feel exciting whatsoever. And then up front, Isak could be great for 10.5. And when Salah goes to African Cup of Nations, maybe Isak's on penalties. But maybe Ekitike starts the old game. So this is the problem with Liverpool, right? I don't want to write them off as options because the fixture run is amazing. But which players? I don't know. You just can't justify selling Haaland for Salah, I don't think. I've looked at it, by the way. I've looked at doing Haaland to Salah in 12, free hit in 13 to get Haaland back, then having Salah in 14. But you're going to lose team value on Haaland doing that, and you're definitely going to want Haaland back. And it just feels horrible going without him. So maybe Salah is the sacrifice, even though the fixtures are good. So that basically leaves Van Dijk and Gakpo. At the moment, if Ekitike got injured, I'd be much more interested in Isak. If Isak got injured, I'd be much more interested in Ekitike. It's just hard to justify a 10.5 million Liverpool player that may not even play more than 75 minutes in any given game and could get benched because his backup, Ekitike, has looked better than him so far. So I will never write players off. I think it's crazy to do that. People are just writing off Liverpool now as if they're terrible. Right? They're obviously not. That fixture run is incredible. I've got no intentions to sell Van Dijk. And I would like to add 1 or 2 players in game week 12. But honestly, having looked at plans, I'm not sure it will happen. I'm not sure it will happen. Maybe Gakpo, just because he's easy to get to. But all it will take is another benching between now and game week 12. And Gakpo will be less popular than he is right now. So, yeah, I know that's a long-winded answer, but I wouldn't necessarily go out of my way to plan it. I would try and leave my options open, but don't write them off either. But there really are limited options. And Van Dijk at 6 million, yeah, it's the don't sell, but I would wait until game week 12 till you bring him in. So Crystal Palace players, which are the best 3 to own? And these are the options to pick from. So Henderson, Richards, Lacroix, Munoz, Gay, Sarr, and Mateta. Now, if I was wildcarding this week, there's only 4 of those players that I'd be considering. That is Richards, Munoz, Sarr, and Mateta. That's not to say that Gay and Lacroix and Henderson and maybe even Mitchell, etc. are bad. They're not. And this is a bit like the Arsenal conversation earlier on. If I had a different combination of 3 Palace, I wouldn't necessarily be looking to force it to a different combination. So let's say you're like me and you've got Lacroix. I don't see a massive need to go out of my way to sell him to Richards or Munoz. He's still a good pick. He's just not who I would pick on wildcard. And the reason for that is if you want a defender, you either go and buy the guy that is ridiculously attacking, which is Munoz, or you go for the guy that's pretty good for defensive contributions that only cost 4.5. Now, I still think Lacroix is a perfectly fine pick. He will get a goal eventually. His goal threat's not bad from set pieces, and he's okay for defensive contributions. But in Richards, you can get someone that's also good for defcons for less money. So that's why I wouldn't go for Lacroix on wildcard. Honestly, I go Munoz right now. I know this whole season, the talk has been around defensive contributions for defenders, and they are important, and there's lots of good defcon defenders out there. But I mean, not like... I think the last couple of weeks has just been a reminder of how good Munoz is. His expected goal involvement is insane. We're talking about Trent levels of attacking potential. And the fixtures, like, if I was wildcarding, I'd have Munoz. I'm telling you right now, I'd find the money to have him over Richards. So I like Richards as a cheaper option at 4.5. But honestly, it's Munoz, Sarr, and Mateta. I don't know why I'm talking so long about this. That's who I would go for. Mateta, for me, outside of Harden's the best forward. Nailed on, penalties, and obviously great fixtures, which is why we're talking about them. Sarr, around that 6.5 million price point, is such good value. Like, if Mateta's not scoring the goal, it's going to be Sarr. His underlying numbers are incredible for that price point. Like, he could easily be like a probably like a 7.5 million player, I think, with his underlying numbers. He doesn't have penalties, of course, but if he was 7 or 7.5, he wouldn't be someone to necessarily ignore. That's how good I think he is. So Sarr, Mateta, and Munoz. That's it. Easy. I was wildcarding right now. But if you've got a different combination, that's also fine. So which Chelsea defender is the best pick? Am I allowed to say that I don't know? Like, often when I get a question for a video, I've already got an opinion. So recording an answer is fairly straightforward. Now, sometimes I have to re-record because I mess up. But for this one, I don't think, even if I re-record, I don't think the answer is going to get any better because I'm not quite sure. So I guess I'll just talk it out loud and hopefully it'll be somewhat useful. So I've narrowed it down to Chalobah, Cucurella, and Reece James. I think that's the main 3 defenders that people will be looking at. They do have other options, but I don't think I would go for them. So they've got this 3.9 million defender. I'm not going to try and pronounce the second. It's like Achimpong, I think. Josh is the first name, 3.9. He's played well recently. He has started the last 2 games against both Liverpool and Forest. He's highly rated, but I don't think you can guarantee the minutes because of Tosin. But because of the other centre-back options, I don't think you can guarantee the minutes for Tosin either. So I think you've basically got to ignore both of them. And at the moment, if you go for a centre-back, it's probably got to be Chalobah, who's pretty good for defensive contributions, 8.14 per start, and not bad attacking threat either. Now, does that mean Chalobah's going to start every game? Possibly not, but I don't think you can guarantee that for any Chelsea defender. So centre-back-wise, I'd look at look at Chalobah. Cucurella is 6.1 million. We know from last season how attacking he can be. Hasn't necessarily shown it so far. I just think, I don't know, this is more of a kind of structure thing. But when I picture most people's squads right now, I'm not sure they've got a space for a 6.1 million defender. So for that reason, I think Cucurella is good if you happen to be flush with cash. Or maybe we've got like I don't know, let's say you're sick of Van Dijk and you're selling him. It's a straight swap to Cucurella. I quite like it if it fits in with the rest of your structure. But I wouldn't go out of my way to find the money for him. So I guess for that reason, I'd probably mostly ruled him out as well. So then it's Chalobah versus Reece James. If you think Reece James can stay fit, which to be fair, he is proving that maybe he can do that now, he's the option I would go for. He's probably the most exciting. We'll take some set pieces. Has shown in the last game he can still be attacking. The underlying numbers are good as well. He's not as good as defensive contributions for Chalobah. If you think he can stay fit, Reece James, but I just have trust issues there. I think the guy has just been ravaged with injuries. It's obviously not his fault. He's just been super unlucky. I don't know. This is the problem with like thinking out loud when you don't really know. I'll say this. If you're wildcarding around game week 13, then I'd maybe risk Reece James to the next 4 and just hope he starts all of them. But it is far from a guarantee, especially when Gusto is not suspended. So if you're wildcarding 13, I'd probably risk James. If you're picking them for the good fixtures now, but you may want to keep them longer term, I'd probably go for Chalobah. But the reason that I started with I don't know is because I've not thought much about Chelsea because I'm just not that interested in them from a defensive point of view. I don't fully trust the minutes of any of them, even though Chalobah, Cucurella and James will probably be fine. And the fixtures are really good. I just don't see them as longer term picks. So I think it is a short term move. So I actually think my favourite option is probably Chalobah because he's the cheapest. And I think his minutes are just as good as the other two. And obviously there's no fitness concerns like James. But there is part of me that just thinks Reece James in the past has been so good, why not go back there? So it depends how confident you are in his fitness. If you're super confident, go James. Otherwise, pick Chalobah. I think Cucurella at 6.1 million is maybe just a little bit expensive. That probably wasn't useful at all. Like the rest of the video. Thanks very much. Give it a like, hit subscribe. I'll catch you tomorrow.